Good morning, members, officers and members of the public. My name is John Cater Clark. To the board, the public element of today's meeting is being live streamed in line with City Corporation's policies, and the recording shall be retained for up to 1 year. Chairman.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Chris, apologies. We lost your Christopher off the front page. I hope you'll forgive us. We're delighted to see you anyway. Right, Town Clerk, let's
Chairman, thank you. Item 1, apologies. I've received formal apologies from Alderman Alison Gowman, Deputy Nigat Qureshi, and Deputy Paul Martinelli. And yes, absolutely, Deputy Qureshi is online today, joining us on Teams. At item 2, Chairman, are member declarations under the Code of Conduct. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Absolutely. Chairman, item 3, the public minutes of our last meeting on the 17th of September for decision, pages 5 through 8.
I hope everybody agrees they're a correct record. If there's anything missing, please say. But if anyone has got any questions, please would they ask them now? Yes, Chris, actually, that's interesting. We've lost your Christopher again in the minutes as well.
My apologies, Mr. Hutchinson. It must be an issue on our software. I will ensure it's corrected, though. Thank you. My apologies.
Anything that anyone wants to raise? Just Wendy, thank you.
There's just a thank you, Chair. There's just a correction on page 6 that the operations manage should have an R on the end. It should be operations manager.
And just so everybody knows, we're going to pick up the question about St John Street in the non-public part of the meeting in more detail. Happy we can move on?
Chairman, thank you. Item 4, updates from the general managers. For information, pages 9 through 12.
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing further to add, given your comment of just a moment ago regarding the St John's Street road closure, except to say that just this morning the SMTA and I have submitted a grant funding application to Destination City for the Christmas auction, for the funding to cover the Christmas auction.
I know, Wendy, I thought you were going to raise something, but James, that's your hand first.
Thank you, Chairman. Are we standing, sitting? What's your blessing? I have a question on the Smithfield report, page 9. It's obviously now in this sort of structure, and there's an energy subheading, but actually the entry under energy, to my mind, isn't really about energy, it's about water usage. So I did want to understand what we're expecting to have under the report, and if there's some energy element to the water, great, but it's not really there. Thank you.
As Mr. Tunbridge has correctly pointed out, the formula for the general managers to complete has sort of morphed over the years, and there is a heading sort of entitled energy. Perhaps that's not specifically energy, but it was more about utility usage. So that's the reason I've nodded to that item at that point.
Chairman, can I just make a suggestion? Knowing I was the idiot that started these things, but they were less formulated. I wonder if we shouldn't say, that's the form, but make sure that everyone feels comfortable that if there isn't something under a regular item, that they feel free to sort of just adjust it, because we just want the information. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, you could have a paragraph which has exceptions or something like that. So any other business? Oliver, you had a point.
Thank you. It's just a question, really. I'm wondering why the issue of St John Street, which is of concern to wider members of the public and others, should be dealt with in non-public. Is there a particular reason for that? Why shouldn't we discuss it in public?
I
Chairman, I would be happy to provide an update on actions that have been taken since the last meeting. I think that would spark a discussion. I think that discussion may be better. You may decide that discussion is better held under non-public.
In fairness to Dan, at call over, he was going to do that, and I changed my mind walking down the corridor. So, which was to take it into public. So actually, why don't you give an update as to where we are at the moment, and then see where we get to from there.
Thank you, Chairman. So following the points raised at the last meeting of your board, I got in touch with Islington colleagues, challenged them about the consultation that they had been through, the consultation process that they had been through, and they accepted that it was flawed. And essentially just relaunched the consultation. I took advice from colleagues in highways, and we sort of consulted quite extensively. Colleagues in highways encouraged the markets division to object under the sort of terms that we would all agree that it sort of would be have a negative impact on operations at Smithfield Markets. I submitted an objection, and around a week ago was informed that objection was unsuccessful. That's pretty much what I'm comfortable sort of explaining sort of in public.
You want to come
Thank
back?
you, but I don't want to come back in public unless you permit me to come back.
I think we can. I'm more relaxed about talking about it.
I don't think there's any inherent objections that I can see. I mean, it's obviously of concern to the traders in the area, which is a wide group of people. And I just wanted to ask where we go next. What are our proposals hereafter to pursue this, to make certain that legitimate commercial activity is not being hindered unreasonably by restrictions from Islington? That's the question, it seems to me, that needs to be answered. I'd be grateful for your assistance.
And I think it was very clear that came out very clearly in the meeting we had prior to the letter that
I understand that. I understand.
Mark, you wanted to say something?
Well, it was just really to that, and I wonder whether we've established a kind of a clear corporation position with the right political levers to engage. So I'm thinking potentially the chair of policy. I just wonder if there is another way of addressing this with Islington, because it feels like we're being brushed off at the moment. Thanks, Chair.
James?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm just double checking Schedule 12 of the 1972 Act. I don't know what would fall under exemptions to take this into private, but maybe there's something that I don't know.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm relaxed about that.
But I had two questions. Forgive me, although I read the minutes, I couldn't be at the last meeting, so I didn't get the full understanding of view. So it would be very helpful to me to at least know why Islington wants to do this, and perhaps so far as we've had a public statement, what we know is flawed, because that would be quite helpful. And then I would quite like to ask one question in relation to the letter that you circulated, but I haven't gone to it because you indicated you might do it in private.
Okay, on the question of the letter, everybody had it last week, and there is a draft reply being built by the city surveyor, subject to what we discussed this morning.
I think my question might be safe. You could take.
Yeah, no, I'm completely relaxed about your question. But just to answer two things, Chris Hayward and the town clerk are fully aware and have said that they would engage with Islington, which is quite satisfactory, actually quite helpful. They obviously have seen a copy of this letter as well. In fact, we've had good engagement from Paul Wilkinson, the city surveyor, Ben, Dan, a number of other people within the organisation. We've had advice from the city solicitors team. So I think we've, from a corporation side, we've done what you would expect us to have done. the problem is, going back to Oliver's point about the effect on the traders, is significant, and what none of us can quantify, because the tendency has been for people to visit at 8 o'clock in the morning when the market's effectively closed.
Yes.
So that doesn't entirely help. I mean, we have had a volunteer, possibly the chief commoner, is going to go there at 2 o'clock in the morning to actually see what's happening.
I think you should be stationed there all night, Chairman.
Well, that we see that there. I knew it would get good support, this idea. But that is one of the other problems, is that everybody's taking it at different time slots, which doesn't help. Plus, and this is another very valid point from, I think it was the chairman of the SMTA and Mr. Martinelli at our meeting, pointed out that at least twice a week, 2,000 people come out of a nightclub at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning there.
Yeah.
And so you've got queues of Uber motor cars, and you've got the addition of a function going on that has absolutely nothing to do with the markets at all, but is potentially, I would assume, a significant hindrance. I'm very conscious, Wendy, you wanted to ask something.
Just a couple of points. They have no right to throw out an objection, because to a public consultation, everybody's entitled as users to put in an objection. So I don't understand why they've said they won't accept the objection. But I'd really like to know what is the rationale behind closing the street, because in the daytime there's not very much traffic along there anyway, but obviously from the nightclub and for the market there is. But I don't understand why they're closing it, and what's the rationale?
Well, some of the people in this room, I think, were at the Streets and Walkways meeting. And they weren't entirely, well, I may get this wrong. I got the feeling that there were, everyone, were you at the?
I was.
Yeah, well, maybe you'd like to give a, because, yeah.
Chairman, we weren't actually told why Islington wanted to close the road, other than that it's sort of fitted with their vision for the area. We were quite clear that we had some difficulties with the concept, which is why we wanted the officers for this department and this committee to make the response on behalf of the city corporation.
Well, I think it was Streets and Walkways to not take it on, but to pass it to the city surveyor for the response via the Markets Board.
Yes.
I would say that none of us have actually had a clear understanding of what Islington, other than it's this pedestrianisation of areas around the city. Dan, do you want to add anything on that?
Chair, just because I've got the answer to my first question. My second
okay.
question wasn't picked up. Maybe Dan can pick it up when you're answering this, which is, what was wrong with their consultation? Thank you.
I can answer that very straightforwardly. The Highways Department of the City of London are a statutory consultee. They had held informal conversations with their colleagues from Islington, but weren't consulted in the correct statutory way. The public consultation, my predecessor responded to. I understand the SMTA executive also responded to the public consultation, and those concerns were responded to but ultimately dismissed. So when I challenged colleagues at Islington about the process, they accepted that they hadn't ticked every box, and so this is why they relaunched the sort of statutory consultation. I think to add further, I'd just be going over old ground.
I think the other thing was that with the relaunch, it was only for a short period of time.
It was just for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Jim, can I just understand? Sorry, I'm not good on legalities or processes particularly. So when they relaunched for that 3 weeks, did they formally consult our streets team, our public route?
They formally consulted our streets team, but they didn't consult the markets division, who were the ones that had challenged them on that objection.
But then how did the...
Oh, just for a second, Mark, sorry. I'm not sure they consulted the SMTA either at that stage.
No, because the SMTA aren't a statutory consultee, neither are the local market managers, that we weren't consulted, we were advised.
So we don't have a statutory, this part of the corporation doesn't have a statutory engagement. How did the streets team, I'm sorry, I'm not using the term correctly, respond? Because I'm just concerned that if Streets and Walkways pass this back to us and we have no kind of formal locus, that's not the most effective way for the corporation to respond.
No, I'm happy in here. Marion, I'm happy for us to be in public, actually, unless you've got a very strong reason why you think it shouldn't be.
I think the more detailed discussion on going forward should perhaps be non-public.
Well, I think at the moment we're trying to get to where the starting point.
I mean, I don't want this to end up being officer bashing. I think it was very clear at Streets and Walkways that the officers made it clear that they felt that it would be better for the Surveyors Department at supporting the markets decision and rep to put in an official representation rather than the streets and the transport officers, because the road closure sort of aligns with our policies on pedestrianisation and all of that sort of thing, and it would confuse Islington if they were to get a rep saying one way and then a rep saying the other. So they felt that it would be better if they didn't say anything.
Well, so the reason we had the meeting with the SMTA after the Streets and Walkways meeting was specifically because it became a surveyor markets board question. That's why I'm relaxed about it being at the moment in the.
And the recommendation
about officer
the recommendation from the Streets and Walkways Committee was to ensure that the strongest and best representation came via the market, because obviously the market traders know how the street network works. And therefore they have more of intelligence, and also, it affects them more than anybody else. Yeah. And we felt that it would be better coming via them rather than Streets and Walkways.
I can answer that as well, but Mark.
Indeed, Chairman, and I understand the logic of that. But if the consequence is that the best informed people, i.e., this group of people, is then denied a hearing by Islington, it just means we don't even get to the room to have the conversation.
Okay. Chairman.
Hugh was next on that.
Just on this point specifically, it's a point of clarification. At Streets and Walkways, the discussion, and you might think this is a distinction without a difference, but I think this distinction is quite important in this context. At Streets and Walkways, the discussion was, what we were told by officers, was that Streets and Walkways is not a statutory consultee. The corporation is a statutory consultee. The corporation is responsible for giving one official response to the statutory consultation, and at Streets and Walkways it was agreed that one official corporation response would come from the surveyors. So it was our understanding at Streets and Walkways that the response from the Surveyors Department would carry the weight of a statutory consultation.
And then is that Islington's understanding?
Well, so Edward, your point's now picked up by you.
Yeah, that is precisely the point, Chairman. It is the corporation is statutory consultee, not a department within the corporation. Therefore, any response on our letterhead, is a response to the statutory consultation.
Okay. So
then Islington seemed to have flawed their process again, because we should have been consulted as a corporation.
But it's who, Chairman, Islington write to in the corporation. Of course, they're going to write to the streets team, because that is who they would normally write to when consulting on a streets matter.
Okay, I'd quite like to hear from Greg, because he's been waiting very patiently on this. Your Mike, I'd like to keep going on the.
So we're not going to we're not going to bring this into the confidential.
Unless anyone. Well, let's start. The two things I want to clear up before you start. First thing, just 1 second, Greg. In fact, officers have been incredibly helpful on this, Marianne. So the meeting we had with the SMTA was with officers. So I think we've been working in a very joined up way on this. So there's no question of any bashing. I promise you that. Greg, sorry.
If I can just state, I'm here as an elected member on this committee. The most important thing there is this is going to be implemented in April 26. So we could be going around the houses all day and all of a sudden you're the date and it's happened. My constituents have asked me to put it across to you. I can't overstate the seriousness of this. The seriousness of this. And the reason it is that serious, St John Street is so important to the running of the market. I won't go into the nightclub because you just mentioned that.
Greg, I've had from both sides because I know what you're going to say next. Well, I have a guess of what you're about to say next, which I think does need to be
Confidential.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're certainly, if we're going to talk about anything to do with Parliament,
No, okay.
I
Definitely.
think it would be helpful.
Chairman, thank you for all the inputs because they've set a foundation for my final question, and you can decide whether it stays here or comes on. But I was building to try and work out, because there's a reference potentially to judicial review in the letter, you know, what action do we take if this consultation discussion doesn't work out? And the 2 points on that are that you have only 3 months to do it. And the question is, who does it? Are the tenants going to do something? Are the corporation thinking about it? I wanted to understand what we're being asked to think about. Thank you.
Well, I think the point that Hugh and Edward have made about it is the corporation. So whether it's the Markets Board that wrote or who actually wrote.
No, I'm talking about the judicial review.
Yeah, I know, but therefore we need to know what the reply was as well. So I think that's what I was. Yeah. Okay. So can we park St John? Well, reopen St John Street in private. Wendy, you've got another question.
Well, only just to say that their closing the street is pushing traffic into our streets, and I hope that's been made very firmly because we should all be working together on what streets are open and closed, not just arbitrary moving from one area into another.
Well, just to be very clear on that, one of the things we discussed, which is not party to going into private, is we did look at opening up some other streets, but of course they're part of the ring of steel around the city, so there's a restriction on opening them. So again, we have been thinking about other solutions that we can create so that we have our hands tied on that particular area of change. Forgetting St John Street, is there anything else we want to ask about the report so far on Smithfield? I'm delighted to hear about the request for the grant for the Christmas auction. Everybody happy? Billingsgate.
So nothing further to update on further than the provided updates in the reports. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions on Marianne?
Can I thank the superintendent for organising the visits the other week? It was absolutely fascinating. I have mentioned previously, Chairman, that I wonder whether or not we could visit the market when they're in full swing, full flow, to actually see the dynamics and the buzz and the hard work that actually goes on and the chaos and the colours and everything else. And therefore, I wonder when we do visits in the future if we can time it so it's later at night, so that we can really appreciate the work that the traders and our officers are actually undertaking rather than when it's just closing up. But thank you very much. It really was quite insightful. Thank you.
Well, I know we've had massive debates around the corporation about times of meetings, but if we were to say we'd meet at Billingsgate at 10 o'clock at night for a Markets Board and then go for a visit, you know, how's that going to react with people? To be considered. But I agree. What is extraordinary is across the corporation how many of the things that we do don't get visited by members. I know the chief has a particular concern about this. Do you want to make any comment on that?
Well, no, I just think, you know, the wholesale markets are a really important part of what we do. And I think it's hard, maybe the dates clash to get members of this board to come along, but it'd be, I think, much better to try and widen it to the court to see exactly what we have, the assets we have and the talent we have in those markets. And then it's the question of time of day, whether it's first thing or last thing in the day to do it. But I just encourage more members to come along.
Anything else on Billingsgate? Okay, thank you. Ms. Spittlefield.
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing to add unless there's any questions.
Do you want? Greg?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm alarmed to see under the health and safety visitors, there'll be visitor stroke customers selling produce from the car park. I'm alarmed, I'm horrified. If I can suggest them, Smithfield have had that problems in the past, not in recent years, but in the past. If I can suggest, and it will stop it immediately, ban the people for a week, oh my, well done. So you're in front of me, but yeah. I was only suggesting.
It was raised by a couple of tenants after one of the Tenants Association council meetings that they'd spotted some pockets on the car park where they suspected it. So we asked that they report it straight away to the constabulary if they become aware. Constables will go and visit it. We shut it down. We take the registration plates and they get banned, so they can't actually enter the premises.
Well, I think that's a really good example of why the Markets Board remains relevant, because that's the sharing of best practice. So thank you very much for that, Marianne.
I understand you're introducing a new system into the market where you have to sign up and be a member to be able to get in. So hopefully that will cut out a lot of these illegal practices. And I think that's why the traders actually said that they, unlike the other markets who welcome the public, they see themselves really mainly as a wholesale trading market.
Yeah, we're continuing to look into the membership scheme. It's not going to be a quick thing we can introduce, but certainly in the interim, the barrier system we have and the ability to ban vehicles, monitor vehicles, it certainly helps. So we'll get there.
Chris, do you want to add anything?
No, sorry, Emma's just said it exactly as it is. We had the problem with trading in the car park going on. It's something it's been going on for decades, but with the barrier system that we now have, the officers have the ability to ban vehicles from the market. That's not to say that vehicles then get swapped over, but we will then still continue to report, and the constabulary will continue to ban. And that scenario hopefully will go away. It's something that's gone on, as Greg said. I'm sure you've suffered with it in your market, and we have suffered with it for generations in our market. It's a market with so many people are there, and a lorry turns up with product on there that's desirable, and cash can transact, can do a transaction in the car park without it coming to the stands. It makes the whole thing a lot cheaper, and obviously it's quite exciting to do. But nevertheless, it's something that we are on top of, and with the help of Emma and her team. Hopefully we will get completely on top of it, and it will be a practice that no longer exists.
Oh, that's very helpful.
And also I wanted to follow up on the cleaning report. And it was great for those members who went to New Spitalfields recently to see the mighty who've taken over the cleaning aspect. Do you want to just update other members about, from my point of view, the state of the art process that people go through that?
So we have the polluter pays principle at Spitalfields. So tenants all have their own segregated bins. They've always been in the country style contract. They were chipped, they get scanned, weighed, and then we can rebill all the tenants accordingly. Mighty have taken that to the next steps. They've upgraded a lot of the equipment. They've now got a camera system built in so that when the bins come in, it's all photographed. So for example, the forklift and the driver that places the bin on the weigh scales, it's all held in the system. So anyone that contests their waste bill a month later, we've got evidence for the lot. So it really just tightens that polluter pays principle. We've not had any real negative feedback from increasing the prices either. But again, we can demonstrate quite clearly that the transportation costs, the gate fees for the various waste streams have gone up. While it's all paid for out of the service charge, we need to be, shrinking that gap by making sure that the individual tenants are paying appropriately for what they generate. So again, that's all just really been able to improve with the new Mighty contract. They've worked really well with us, so we're impressed.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank Emma for the trip as well. Being new to the market, I wondered whether or not there could be an information report on how we deal with the wastage, because I was really intrigued to see how we're recycling as much food as possible. And I think that's great. And I'd like to see and have a greater understanding on how we're dealing with waste and sustainability across all the markets. That would be really great. And can I just ask for an update on the Tenants Association's lease negotiations, which seems to be highly protracted, taking a long time, and I think very frustrating for the tenants.
Your time is perfect because Steve is waiting to do it.
Ah, brilliant.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the question. Yeah. So I don't think things are as protracted as you're suggesting. Before the last meeting, there had been a meeting which I'd attended. There's been an exchange of correspondence since that meeting, and a further meeting. Half term got in the way. Our agent has come back to the tenants agent with a position on rents. There are a couple of side issues on that affect the service charge that need to be resolved simultaneously. I've asked our agent just to show that we want to progress things as quickly as possible to follow up all correspondence with the offer of a meeting at the earliest opportunity, so that we are always open for business. So after the last correspondence, we offered a meeting for the week commencing this week. The Tenants Association, or your agent has come back to us recommending a meeting with all parties on the 17th or 19th of November. They wanted their client to attend and the city, which would be me, to attend. We've gone back and said, well, actually, we can't make those two dates, but we can make earlier dates. We think the agent should continue the rent discussions. There'll be some other issues on the lease to be discussed principal to principal. So we've come back and suggested either this Friday or the first 3 days of next week, just to keep things moving. I've also said, obviously, I am happy to attend a meeting if the Tenants Association are attending, but I don't want that to get in the way with the rental discussion. I do not intend to be part of the discussion on rents, and I would imagine the Tenants Association will leave that to their agent too. We are very keen to get things resolved as quickly as possible. I think we've agreed in principle a lease commencement date of the end of January next year, which will give the tenants a clean 10-year term. The current lease has expired and they're holding over in May. The city won't lose out because there'll be an interim rent payable for the period, but it'll give the tenants a 10-year term from the conclusion of negotiations. So I'm optimistic things can be agreed.
Chris, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I concur exactly what Steve just said. That's exactly what's happened. I think there was another meeting that took place between the agents without yourself present, and I'm not sure that was quite how it's supposed to be, but nevertheless.
I will address that point. So, Chairman, I did brief the agent and say, look, there was a contentious point at a previous meeting on another matter, and so I've been asked to attend meetings. The agent said, well, hang about. They didn't say this before they did it. They met the agent and said, well, when I took them to task on it, they said, well, hang about. We assumed you meant when the Tenants Association were attending. And I provisionally said, well, that does make sense. We expect the agents to be able to have a dialogue, and I don't need to hold their hand at every meeting. But I have said there is not to be a meeting that the Tenants Association are attending if I'm not in attendance too.
I think Emma was going to attend as well. Was that right or not? You weren't. Okay. But the important thing, Chris, as far as I'm concerned, is the timetable. We have a target date of the end of January. Well, we have a fixed date at the end of January in my mind. And that we possibly may need delegated authority to the chair and deputy chair to, with luck, have this sorted before Christmas in the eyes of the Markets Board anyway, because we don't meet until the 21st of January next.
Yes, so the sooner it's sorry, Andrew, do you want to say something else?
Simply picking up on the chairman's point, because we discussed as the call over, so I was going to ask the meeting if they would delegate authority in the normal way to the town clerk and the chairman and deputy chairman, so that if we did reach a decision before the next meeting and it couldn't fit in with the normal report cycle, I can put a report to that party. So if that were amenable to the committee, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's probably not very good for our side if I confess to being a little bit old and absent-minded, so I do apologise, Steve. So I was wrong, Andrew. Anyway, sorry about that. We are very keen to get this done, but we are there's a lot for the agents to discuss. Yeah, our agents are finding it difficult to find how your agent has come to some of the figures that he's come to. So, but I absolutely agree with you. The agents are the people that negotiated it. We will be present at this meeting and we will not have anything to say pertaining to the actual negotiations of the rate. We have given our agents very clear guidance where we'd like to be. They've given us very clear guidance of where it ought to be, and backed up by some very well researched evidence that we can't quite see where your agent's getting his evidence from. It doesn't quite make sense to us, but hopefully that will be explained to us fully in the meeting, because as I say, at the minute we're a little way apart on the actual level. But the actual rent negotiation hopefully will be concluded within the timescale. We are very keen to do that. Our proposal was, in our response to the initial Section 25 notice, was for a 15-year lease, which is not unusual in this room. There are 15-year leases around, but nevertheless, it won't be a stumbling block if we can get everything else sorted out. But we are absolutely keen to get it done. There are some unhelpful things that have gone on in that meeting that you weren't actually in. There was there's a lease, a compound that's actually available and was actually it's slipped on. I have to confess, it slipped under our radar. I didn't think this would happen at all. There was a lot of demand for this particular compound. The compound was leased from the Corporation of London by a forklift engineering company, and they did an awful lot of work on it. They put a very nice building on this compound, and it's got a fenced off car park. And the compounds are currently out at around about £6 a square foot, and the proposal from the corporation was £8 a square foot. Unfortunately, a deal was done because there was such a lot of interest in it, and £12 a square foot was achieved by the Corporation of London, by the agent for the Corporation of London. At that point, at the meeting that you weren't there at, Steve, the agent for the Corporation of London withdrew the £8 and has said it's now £12 he's looking for the compounds. This is all to be discussed, but it's the actual principle of the thing that is the problem. While leases are out, are in an interim period, period.
Just hold on a second. I know you're aware of this. I'm just wondering again if this should this be, because I didn't think we were going to talk numbers if we're in the public section.
Chairman, it's obviously
we
are getting into financial matters and
sorry,
but briefly on the point, yes, I am aware of it, and in fact lawyers are instructed on a new lease of this compound. Perfectly reasonable that new evidence comes to light, that it gets thrown into the discussion. It is a very particular deal there, and
that's separate to what we were talking about previously.
Yeah, but it is on one minor point on one small class of property, but it's impossible for an agent to ignore new evidence, so it's had to be thrown into the mix.
Well, I know that we definitely are not aware of any of this, so man.
Can we pick this up in non-public?
Well, I think actually I'm not sure that it's even relevant to today, because we know nothing about it, so it'd be better to hear in full what is actually going on. And Ben, unfortunately, is not here today.
Well, it might be helpful if the committee understood that in non-public.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So can we leave that until we get into the private session? Okay. That's right. There's not a problem at all. Okay. Anything else on the actual lease negotiations that people want to raise? You're happy with the answer? Okay.
A conversation that's frank and open, but in non-public.
Okay, perfect. So shall we move on to item 5? Oh, are you happy to approve the delegated authority on the leases? But purely because our meeting isn't until the 21st of Jan. Okay.
That's fine, Chairman. It's just that we were just doing the updates from the market. So technically, if you're trying to record it, you need to move a motion. You'll get support, but it's not really being done the right way.
Okay. Do you want to do it the right way?
Absolutely, Chairman, yes. Are members content then to grant a delegated authority to the town clerk in consultation with the chairman and the deputy chairman of the board to approve this before we meet our next meeting on the 21st of January? Obviously, if the things are delayed, and we pick it up at that meeting, but in the interim period until that point, delegated authority is in place to approve this.
And we'd be informed of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely, of course. Yeah. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Chairman, thank you. Item 5, the revenue and capital budgets for 2026-27, a joint report of the Chamberlain City Surveyor for decision, pages 13 through 28.
Any questions on this? Oh, do you want to speak about it first?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is the annual report that we submit to you for the revenue and capital budgets overseen by the board. It's asking members to note the revisions we've made to the revenue budgets in the current financial year and to approve the draft estimates we have for the next financial year. The draft budget was prepared in line with the RASC resource base that we have. The draft estimate presented in this report totals a net expenditure of 1.3 million compared to the current year budget of 1.5 million. Not included in this report is information on the current debt level that the city surveyor currently has for the markets, which has dropped to 1.55%. Mentioning that just because of the financial implications it could potentially have to income recovery. There is an operating statement included in the report, which at the chairman's request now includes all aspects of the market with nothing excluded. And I'm happy to take any further questions any members may have.
Yeah, can I just make one comment? Thanks to the officers to get us down to that 1.55%. It's a tremendous target that we've got to, and it would be good to have it in the report, and certainly minuted after this meeting. And I'd just like to ask, you know, how does this department compare with other departments across the corporation?
Unfortunately, I am unable to comment exactly on what the rest of the corporation's current debt levels are as a percentage, but I know that the city surveyors investment properties are working towards a similar level to the ones that reported to this board. I can come back to you on any further debt levels if that helps you.
John, you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I think you're doing very well compared to others. We don't have the figures immediately in front of us, but you are doing very well to be on top of your debt, which is good.
Chairman, I think the corporation staff have done magnificent. 1.5%, I think magnificent. And every other department's got to get on the back end of the debt level of the markets. But anyway, all I can say is well done.
Everybody.
Well, Chair, I just wonder, we sometimes talk about lessons learned when things go wrong, but perhaps there are lessons learned for other departments from the way the markets officers are performing. Thank you.
Oliver?
Thank you. Could I just ask a question about Appendix 1, page 19? There isn't a note. There are some very helpful notes in relation to some of the changes. There isn't a note, for instance, in relation to local risk city fund, the service charge at Spitalfield, which has climbed and is anticipated to climb from 99,000 to 183,000 next year, financial year 26-27. It would be nice to know. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but could we know what that is?
Yeah.
We'll have to come back to it. We'll have to go through it with Emma and have a look in further detail, and we can give you a note back on that to give you some more detail.
It is only a budget of 125, and obviously the original was 99. So we spent a lot more in. Okay, are you happy to have this on by email?
I don't need an answer today.
Yeah.
I think it's just worth looking at how it's risen or posed to rise from 99 to 183. 26, 27.
I see Andrew and I'll look at what's gone into that paper, but just from the level that I speak to Chris and the association, we're looking at going up by about £200,000 next year, which, considering some of the additional things we've brought in and the projects we're doing, it's not an alarming amount. About £500,000 equates to, was it £1? Adds about £1 per square foot to the tenants. I'm trying to remember what we did last year. We saved 500,000 last year, so I think we're just going back a little bit, but it's not.
Yeah, no, it's
Chairman, Oliver's being lovely and diplomatic and kind and all the rest of it, but I think we mustn't forget something. What we're being asked to do here is to approve this to send it to Finance Committee. So Finance Committee will receive this, and if we've said it's okay, they're not going to be getting into this. So I'm rather concerned, Chairman, that officers can't answer Oliver's question. And I'm also concerned about ensuring that if they are going to be allowed to go away and will come back, how we get that information quick enough and ensure that the Finance Committee understand it. Thank you, Chair.
So what's the timeline on this going to, because obviously the budgets have to be agreed by March next year, don't they? So what would normally be the timeline for this document?
Well, usually you should agree your estimates by Christmas break so they can all be incorporated into the Finance Committee report, which goes up to Finance and P&R and then on to the court in February. So if you don't agree that, then there's a little bit of a headache there. You won't have an estimate. Agreed.
Any other bits that you're concerned about, or that you'd like answers to? Because what I'm going to suggest is that if we have a list of questions that we should have answered, subject to the answers to those questions, are we happy with this as a draft?
My experience is looking at documents such as this, there are always going to be some changes from what is a budgeted amount to an actual result and a forecast outcome in the next year. But my practice is always to look at the first few lines, see if anything stands out. And this just happens to stand out on the very first line. And some of them have got helpful notes. You'll see over the page, for instance, Appendix 3, there's a very good note. There's a very good explanation over the next two pages, Appendix 4 and 5, but nothing seems to me to answer the question how it's effectively proposed that this service charge should double. Now, there may well be a very good reason, but part of the function of this board is to examine figures and ask how they change, why they change. That is the function of board members in this and any other board of this type. That's all.
So other than the service charge, is there anything else that anyone
shouts out?
No, I agree with you.
No.
Marianne?
Thank you, Chairman. On page 27, I just wanted assurance. It says canopy works. There's no forecast. Are we certain that we've dealt with all the issues on the canopy in the work?
There is ongoing. This is part of the ongoing canopy works, and the surveyors who are leading with this project advised there's £80,000 worth of works in this financial year, which will see a resolution to the issue. No, because it's a one-off project.
So given that we would like an answer, please, to that question from Oliver Sells, are we happy to agree it as a draft subject to a suitable answer for that? Everybody happy?
Well, I go a little bit further and say, yes, subject to a suitable answer, I'd be happy to delegate to you and the Deputy Chairman that you might make a suggestion for an amendment in consequence.
We need a motion.
Technically, I mean, we'll all agree it, but it's just about getting the records right, Chair.
Same thing again.
Thank you, Chairman. In that context, are members content to extend a grant of delegated authority to the town clerk and the chairman and deputy chairman to approve this once that clarification has been given by officers to Mr. Sells and the rest of the board? Thank you. Chairman, turning to item 6, the Climate Action Strategy at the Markets report. This report of the City Surveyor for information, page 29.
Great, thank you very much, Chair and Town Clerk. Happy to just do a brief introduction. This paper provides an update on the climate performance of the markets to date and projects planned over the next 3 years. We are still working, my team, the energy team, are continuing to work with colleagues over in markets to identify projects that make economic sense, and anything that that meets that criteria will continue to proceed. In terms of utility prices, we are looking at a 7% increase in electricity costs for the year going forward from October this year to the next year, and a 2% increase in gas. Just to also remind members that to date, the markets as a whole have received $2.7 million pounds worth of PPA credits, and for this current year, we are looking to, well, projected until April next year, we're looking to return 270,000 in credits from the power purchase agreement. Thank you, Chair. happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can I commend officers on this report and the work that's being done? From a community energy perspective, and speaking as a director of Community Energy London, I think there's a real opportunity here for the city to take a community-led approach to solar at New Spitalfields Market. That means reinvesting any surplus into training, local jobs, and helping traders cut their energy bills, adding huge social value. If the committee is open to it, I'd be very happy to arrange a short meeting next week with the chair and the officers to look in more detail at how a community energy-led solar proposal for New Spitalfields could work in practice. And that would give us a chance to outline what community financing could achieve for the site and how it could deliver on the city's climate action strategy, again, at no cost to the corporation. Thank you, Chair.
Just wanted to say that the team you introduced us to previously have actually now been out with carbon, I can't remember the second name of the business.
Carbon free, yeah.
But we are just waiting for their full proposal for what they could deliver at New Spitalfields.
Okay.
So we've started meetings with procurement now to actually go ahead with a project for Spitalfields. We've had the feasibility study from the company that the energy team initially put us into contact with, and we're waiting on the one from the team that you introduced us to. So I was expecting to have had it by now, but it's imminent. So we'll definitely be looking at it. And it was a really interesting meeting, and it was a really good from the conversations we've had. Sounds great. So I look forward to seeing what they can offer.
Okay, that's great. As I say, what's really good to hear, and as I say, I'll definitely push on it. And I know Emma's very familiar with community energy as well, so that's really good news.
Jason, I like the idea of a meeting, and maybe we could coordinate that with the town clerk, because I think it would be useful, certainly for more of us to understand what is possible. But I know James has got a question.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is really, because this is an informational report, what this board can do in terms of giving steers and direction around this. And to make clear why I asked that question, let me pick up a couple of points in the paper. We heard from the officer's introduction a reference to economic sense criteria. We don't know what that means. It's certainly not in the paper, and it's certainly not in the corporation's climate strategy. And there are well-known issues for businesses right across the country with the cost of energy. And we've just had it confirmed about 7% up on electricity, 2% up on gas. And therefore, when you look at paragraph 1 on page 29, I'm always a little bit worried about some of these policies and strategies that they say all the right thing, but what are we doing about them? And what can this board say we want some focus on? Because in that paragraph, it notes in the last 2 lines that our ambitious strategy to support net zero, keyword support, ends with champion sustainable growth, keyword growth. Then, Chairman, one moves on to page 32 in paragraph 15, and it should be noted that most, keyword most, energy saving initiatives will save money for the tenants. So it's not all about growth. And so therefore I come back to my question. As a board member, if we have the capacity to do this, I would like to investigate a little bit more about what are the tests that we're using on the economics and so on to achieve our laudable aim on the green agenda, but to do so in a way that doesn't unduly harm the businesses, because of course if they start collapsing we won't achieve anything. So that's the core of my question, is what can we do, Chairman, to give direction?
Would you like to pick up on that initially?
Yes, thank you. So I think in terms of the point around what is the economic criteria, it's looking at the longevity of the market and ensuring that we're not investing in equipment that will not save energy beyond or will not save sufficient energy to pay back on that measure within the lifetime of that market site. Because I mean, obviously there are 2 reasons for that. Firstly, that equipment is unlikely to continue to operate beyond the the time that the site closes, and then secondly, from a sustainability point of view, that piece of equipment will have had carbon involved. It's called embodied energy or embodied carbon involved in the making of that piece of equipment. So it doesn't make any, so that's what I'm referring to then in terms of cost effective. So things like controls on heating and cooling and lighting and potentially lighting upgrades, those all meet the sort of criteria for those sort of short-term paybacks. So that's what I was referring to in that point there. Thank you.
I think from my point of view, we have a policy from the corporation to achieve certain things over certain periods of time. And I think from our point of view, we're embracing that and we have that oversight, and we've been reported on how we've reduced things by 50%, which is an amazing achievement, I think. And I think in reality, we got the dashboard, which is available to all members anyway, so you can see in detail what those may be, and that some of them are listed here. But I know, Emma, you're project managing various things that are attributable to New Spitalfields, which has a much longer life period than the other markets, which may be worth commenting on.
Can I get an answer to my question first?
I'm not sure who's going to answer it. Is that?
Chairman, everything is down on page 30. All the targets remain on track. And then there's in paragraph 9, there's exactly what has happened since 2018-19.
I think I would also like to just, mention that we do work very closely with our colleagues at markets. Members of my team have been out recently to visit New Spits and Billingsgate, and we have been having ongoing works at ongoing relations with Smithfield markets as well. So in terms of it being done in collaboration, it's very much a joint effort in terms of how we identify what is the most appropriate course of action for each site.
James, I think the other thing is I'm obviously quite keen to hear from Jason the opportunities, because I think actually ultimately that will feed into what.
But it's completely unrelated to my question.
No, but it will give us a steer potentially on areas that we may not know about, or certainly that I don't.
It doesn't answer my question. There's no way that what Jason can tell you will answer my question.
Jason, are you confident that you can answer his question or not?
Chair, I mean, given that we was discussing earlier on about sort of capital budgets, I mean, given the focus on projects that can pay back, it's worth noting that Community Energy Finance Solar Schemes typically achieve that without calling on city capital at all. So they're effectively self-funding improvements. So yeah, I don't think there's any concern really for traders in regards to a scheme that's community financed, community energy.
Well, it does also say that in here that the traders will benefit from all these initiatives anyway. So you're still not happy?
None of this conversation is going anywhere near my question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, why don't you repeat it? So
I'll try and reframe it, because it's effectively in two parts. What I'm trying to understand is the power of this board in relation. This is an informational paper, so the conversation and learning's always great. But what I'm asking is, what direction, what input can this board give? Because this is an informational paper following a policy by the Court of Common Council. It's come to this board. The things we're learning about have consequences, and what I'm trying to understand is what can we as a board do to say, oh, please do that or don't do that, because this is an informational paper and I don't know what power we as a board have to say, we love that idea, but maybe not that one, or do more work on it. I'm trying to understand, what do we do with this?
Mr. Chairman, could I offer the support of the tenants at Spitalfields that if the surveyors would go back and say that a 15-year lease is acceptable, I'm sure that would help the energy programme immensely.
That's very helpful, Chris. Thank you. James, it's a very good point, but the problem we have is we don't actually see the list in the first instance, do we? So are you asking we see the list so that we can give some guidance?
I'll tie it off, because I suspect that I'm not going to get an answer anyway. But my point, Jim, is I think that what you're trying to do is genuinely laudable. I think what the corporation is trying to do is genuinely laudable. But we've got in this situation where the corporation restructured. We don't have a markets committee, we have a board. The core of this policy is not within our control, but presumably it's coming here because we are meant to be providing the oversight in relation to the markets. But what's not clear to me is what we can do to say, well, we love that bit, we're a bit worried about that bit. do we have the power to say that within these broad aims, here's our steer? Because I think that would then tie with all the things you're trying to do, but I'm just not clear whether we're allowed to do that.
And also, your timing of asking the question is brilliant because Alison Gum's not here, who would have enjoyed trying to answer it probably. But no, it's, Greg, do you want to say something on this? Or?
No, I thought James spoke wonderfully well, to be truthful. But it's perhaps we should look at the policy of the corporations fairly soon, because we know the mood around the country is changing. But the most important thing is not just tenants of the market, tenants of all around the City of London. They've got to be competitive, and it's no good of them folding because they can't afford everything going up. So it's common sense, because the mood around the country is going, whoever the next government's going to be, they ain't going to be Labour, we know that. It's going to cancel zero.
Well, we had Callover discussed the date on the very front of the paper about being 2027. Well, it's actually on page 30. Because are we giving ourselves unrealistic?
Absolutely, we are.
Targets.
And I'm thinking about small businesses and large businesses and whatever. At what cost? That's the difference. At what cost? You know, everyone wants clean air, of course they do, but at what cost?
Emma, we've given you plenty to think about. When do you next come and report to this committee?
I'm not aware. We were asked to provide this report.
This was on the back of Oliver's question about electricity prices.
Potentially, yes. So, but happy to come back whenever. But just to take that point, that the measures that have been introduced at the markets over the last 6 years as part of the Climate Action Strategy have been funded by the Climate Action Strategy pot of funding that is not recharged to the tenants. Thank you.
Chairman, it was just a very brief point, and it's perhaps conceptual and it aligns with James's comment, but on page 32, paragraph 15, perhaps when we receive reports for information or decision, if comments such as that are made, that most initiatives will save money, they should be quantifiable within the report. And if they're not, I mean, I take Mrs. Mead's point, but you know, she's talking about other proofs, I think, than the financial. If they're not provable, they shouldn't be represented.
Oliver, you want to say something?
I'd like to move the subject to cost, if I may. This has become a very contentious and important area for many businesses all over the country, including businesses within the City of London. And it seems to me still that cost and the benefit to the businesses to remain competitive is still not high enough up the agenda, in my view. And I think people all over the country, as Greg says, have now cottoned on to this, as many of us who are sceptical of the dates of the targets which have been set are now legitimately questioning whether they're right. And that leads on to my annual question, which, like Christmas, I always ask about this time of year, is what is the night rate, please? This year, you'll know the answer because you'll be expecting the question, obviously. What is the night rate that businesses are currently being charged in these markets, please, for electricity first and then gas?
I'd also like to add how many other boards or committees of the corporation are actually getting reports about what they're doing within this sector, because it's all very well us making a stand on this, but what's happening on Epping Forest or you know, other parts of you know, the corporation, because at the moment we look as if we're a bit
of an outlier.
Yeah,
you're a shining star, Chairman, and I hope others will follow.
Your question, I'm struggling terribly.
But he understands my point. I pressed for this for some time because every day that a business has to operate, it is concerned about the cost of energy. And it should be highlighted in a report such as this. What is the cost of energy to a business running in Smithfield or Spitalfields or wherever?
Thank you. So there's a few points raised there. Firstly, this is a report on the climate action strategy, not about energy prices. So I would just like to make that clear. We do come to the Markets Board with an energy update that is primarily from my team. This is a report authored by myself and Kate Neal, who's the Director of Climate Action Strategy. So I just want to clarify that point. I don't have the night rates going forward for October forward because the prices are still settling out at the moment. So the detail we do not have. But I am aware that we came to, or that we responded to a question about this time last year on the night rates. And I have reread that paper. And the thrust of that paper is that the majority of the consumption by all of the markets is actually in the daytime, which means that the daytime rate is more important than the nighttime rate, which means that those utility tariffs that offer very, very cheap nighttime rates, they can only do that by offering more expensive daytime rates. So when the colleague in my team ran the figures, what the figures state quite clearly in the response he gave to the question is that if you pursue lower cost nighttime rates, the overall costs are higher. And if you you may recall back in October last year, the total cost of energy that is negotiated with our team, we are comparing exceptionally favourable to the average non-domestic pricing. And if you include the PPA, we are far lower. So in terms of costs, I think we're doing quite well. And then in terms of the cost of delivering climate action, there is only a positive benefit to that to the tenants because you reduce carbon emissions by reducing energy use. So anything that we are doing to reduce carbon emissions is reducing energy use and is reducing bills. Thank you.
Can I just come back on one? I don't want to develop this into a lengthy discussion, but I think it is an interesting point that I think the two sit together. So cost and sustainability are two parts of the same question. They're not, I think, separate discussions for me. Really? And I think a paper such as this, which is very helpful, don't get me wrong, I'm not critical of the paper, but it's only half the picture. You need to look at cost at the same time as you look at progress towards sustainability. And I don't think you're any disagreement between you and me on that.
No, not at all.
I think there may be some disagreement as to the way in which energy is used within the markets at nighttime and daytime. But that's a debate for detailed discussion. What I'm saying is I'd like the whole picture when we get the picture, not just half of it. That's all.
Absolutely. I'm happy to take that away.
Marianne's been waiting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I like to look at the positives in this report, and I think if you focus on the positives, you find more positives. I think that the explanation you've just given us shows that your department is looking at balanced but detailed evidence-based decisions, which only ensure that there's an upside to it. And I think paragraph 14 clearly states that initiatives which pay back and reduce significant carbon before 27 will be considered. Alternative routes will be, funding. So you've already told us that you've achieved a huge amount with no cost to the tenants, reducing our carbon emissions, which ultimately we all have to deal with because we all pay with the negatives. And we've seen that across the globe, regardless of whether people say it's happening or it isn't happening, the evidence is there. And I think this committee and your department, working with the markets team, have delivered some real positive uplifts. And I want to encourage you to do more and keep going on that evidence-based cost uplift, no cost to the tenants, but actually producing real cost benefits and climate change benefits. Thank you.
But Chairman,
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I think the general is positive and a cut in emissions is to be applauded. But a cut in carbon is not necessarily a cut in cost. So paragraph 14 taken and celebrated. But when we have paragraphs like 15, which say that most initiatives will save money, we need to see that proven. Or I think, yeah, maybe not in this paper, we reject in future a comment like that unless it's proven in the document.
Out of sheer ignorance, Emma, where does your sort of team sit within committee reporting? Because I'm very conscious that we're banging a drum as the markets, but who else is, and who else is are you reporting?
So my team sit in the operations directory in City Surveyors, and we report quarterly to RASC on the corporation's operational energy use and the cost of energy. We have recently changed that format because it also used to report on carbon, but we felt that actually that sat with the continued to sit with the climate action strategy team, who report that through investment and growth. So we report predominantly on the usage, how we're reducing it, and the cost of that, both in the past and going forward. Thank you.
So James, picking up your point, I mean, I wonder if we shouldn't be sharing our views with people from those areas, particularly RASC. I mean, that's such a small group of people.
Well, I would fully endorse that, Chairman. A message to RASC and policy, who are meant to look at ING, and they don't always get as much attention as they deserve.
We'll try and compose something outside the meeting, just as an awareness, really. I mean, I think it's worth flagging it up. Christopher.
Mr. Chairman, as far as the renewables are concerned, we have lots of meetings with Emma, our superintendent, and we're very supportive of everything we can do. Basically, I mean, don't get me wrong, what Emma brings to the table is always pretty good news. But at the start of what you said, the other Emma, sorry, 7% increase in electricity, that's an enormous number on top of an already enormous figure that we actually are paying for electricity. I just wonder where that 7% came from, because I haven't got any figures in front of me, but that seems to be high in comparison to others.
Yes, thank you. No, I agree. Obviously, any increase is not welcome. But we have a procurement strategy that is agreed by court, and we have pursued that. We don't have the exact figures at the moment, but in terms of prices of utilities going forward, I think we all are well aware of the continued geopolitical volatility, which usually is what underpins the increases in price. There are some elements in terms of national recharges through upgrading of the electricity grid, and again, that is not that's politics beyond this organisation. We have sent a note through Town Clerk to express our concern around that and raise that with central government. But yes, in terms of the specifics of the unit prices, we won't get those until the end of the calendar year. But I do agree with you, an increase is not welcome. But given the current climate, that unfortunately that is where we are.
Okay, I think on that particular, because Oliver, you're going to want to know what they are. Maybe when you do know them, you could let the Town Clerk know, and he can populate it.
Absolutely. Well, more than happy to come back with a kind of more energy focused report, in the near future.
Brilliant. James, last one.
It is genuinely the last one, but the officer's comments.
It's a difficult question.
The officer's comments have brought to mind a challenge that one of your predecessors had to endure during their term when it was still at Markets Committee, when the corporation switched to the central energy procurement system, which I think the officers just referred to, and the markets were completely ignored, forgotten about, etc. And as a result, for 2 years, certain predecessor of that committee insisted on reports coming persistently back to markets, asking questions and trying to ensure that those that negotiate that central energy supply for the corporation at large don't ignore the uniqueness of the operation of markets. And what I'm worried about, Chairman, from what I've just heard, is that perhaps given the scale of the corporation, maybe we need to be reminding colleagues of the importance of not just seeing us as a line item, but realizing that the energy costs of operating food markets is significant.
Well, highlighted by what Chris just said, but I think you're getting a very clear message from this morning as to what we feel, or what is felt by the board. Are you happy with? But I'm more interested in picking this up across the corporation, and what else other committees and people are doing, because again, there's some linkage.
I completely agree. I'm just making sure that since it's a procurement exercise, whether it's you, the deputy chairman, or others, I just want to make sure that the issues of markets are not forgotten about.
Well, the great thing is I think the town clerk also does finance.
And to add, Chairman, if I may, it's also a standing focus for the investment committee as well, which
So we're
Chairman also members of.
We're joining some dots, hopefully. But it's extremely worthwhile. And Jason, I would like to come back to you outside of this about a meeting. Are you happy that we move on to item 7? And I'm going to fess up that I asked the officer not to stay on this one because I thought it was pretty straightforward. So, Jason, if you've got any very difficult questions, I can ring him. Sorry, introduce item 7.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. For the record, it's Gateway. Item 7 is the Gateway 4 pipe subways of Holborn Viaduct and Snow Hill over Thames Link. This is reported to the Executive Director of the Environment Department for information, page 35.
Now, my view of this was it's very straightforward. We questioned whether we could ask Network Rail for some form of discount. It's a not negotiable sum of £50,000, and it has been approved by Planning and Transportation at the end of October. Has anyone got any questions on this? Happy that we note it. Great. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Item 8, questions on matters relating to the work of the Board Austin Public.
No. Great.
Very shortly. On the last subject on energy, which Oliver, Mark and James have been very vocal on, it shows you the challenges. We could carry on talking to 2 or 3 hours on this. Perhaps a meeting's needed on this alone.
Greg, it is. We keep seeing in the press that UK energy prices are higher than anyone else, probably in the world. So I agree with you. I mean, it's a massive factor. I think probably we should go the route of inquiring as to where this. I'm concerned it just sits in Rask actually, and that's such a small community of our members. But can I come back to you about that outside, because I don't discount it at all. Okay. Oh, Marianne, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to ask about communications for the Christmas auction and the works. How are we communicating the auction? When are we doing that? How are we promoting it? And did we get the funding? I know you said earlier on you've put in a application, but have we secured it?
So the funding application has been submitted this morning. I'm afraid I can't inform you much of the process of how Destination City, how long it takes. I believe they meet monthly, so I would certainly be pressing within a month, and I imagine that we'll be using some sort of softer skills to sort of try and sort of understand when we'll get a decision precisely from Destination City on that. In terms of how we promote, we've got a keep in touch meeting with the SMTA on the 20th of November. It's something I've already flagged with our corporate affairs team. They were certainly seeking clarification that the event will go ahead. Every indication is that the event will go ahead, but we have had a safety advisory group meeting earlier this week. There's another one planned for a couple of weeks' time. I'm very hopeful with a commercial events team, events company that has been employed to deliver this on behalf of the SMTA, that all of the queries that have been put to them by the members of SAG will be responded to. But I'm sure that through our social media and our traditional platforms, we'll promote the event very widely.
Okay.
Chairman, thank you. Item 9, any other business consideration at this point? Item 10, Chairman, is the exclusion of the public. The members content to exclude the public at this point. Thank you. Bear with me.